Welcome. I'm Elinor Silverstein, and today I'm here with Dr. Patrick Hanaway, the Chief Medical Education Officer for the Institute for Functional Medicine. He is also the medical director of the Center for Functional Medicine at the Cleveland Clinic. Dr. Hanaway co-founded with his wife, Lisa Lichtig, the Family to Family, Your Home for Whole Family Health in Asheville, North Carolina. He has also been initiated as a shaman by the Huichol people in the Sierra Madres of central Mexico. Patrick teaches extensively on holism and systems medicine. He also teaches on the clinical application of nutritional biochemistry with an emphasis on digestion, immunology, mitochondrial function, and wellness. You can see why I am so excited to be here with Dr. Hanaway today, talking about all the possibilities, but we're going to focus it in on today, talking a little bit about the mesentery and even histamine. So, Dr. Hanaway, welcome.
Thank you, Elinor. Thank you so much for connecting and bringing me into awareness through movement and the work of Moshe Feldenkrais. It's been, an opening in my own awareness and understanding, something that I'd heard about in the distance, but you've helped to actually help me see it in a new light as it relates to whole health, not just as movement, but as healing. And the work that you're doing with these approaches in the gut has expanded my awareness of what's happening in the gut as well. So appreciations to you.
I want to say in Feldenkrais, we're doing, and maybe we have an internal knowing, but we don't have the science knowing. I mean, I love the science. And to hear from you that day that you came to my workshop and you asked me at the conference, you asked me when I was showing people how to do Feldenkrais movement, working with the organs. And you asked me that question about what am I feeling and sensing when I'm in the area of the small intestines? And it really gave me pause because I had to be truthful. And truthfully, it was the first time it ever came out of my mouth to say, I'm really not feeling the small intestines. I'm listening to the mesentery. And your response was so validating that that's the connection. So I would love, people don't talk about the mesentery. And my goodness, it's so connected, right? It's connected to the large intestine, it's connected to the small intestine, but it's got the blood vessels that are connecting it to the small intestines. It's got lymphatic fluid. Our immune system is so deeply there. And I know what I feel when it goes literally offline with someone and how we can work it. I would love to hear what your thoughts are and what you have to say with that.
Great. Well, we'll talk about both the small intestine, because within the framework of the gut, we have the first, 18 inches or so that goes down to the stomach, and then the stomach is present. And then from there is, they're not really sure these days. It's probably somewhere from 10 to 18 feet of small intestine that weaves its way through. And that's our interface with our environment. But the way in which then it comes into us, once it moves through those, the intestinal barrier lining, that single cell interface with our environment and all the food that we take in, that role of separating literally the wheat from the chaff. In Chinese medicine, the 2 meridian is called the sorter. It's the small intestine meridian, but it's sorting. So it's not only sorting food, what should I take and what should I take in and what should I behind? It's acting as a defense mechanism, but it's also where the immune system is. And the immune system is being educated to say, well, what's part of me? What do I want to take as part of me? And what do I want to move against? And in fact, what we connect to in our environment educates and informs our immune system, because 3/4 of it sits in the lining of our intestine. So as it moves through, then it moves into the vasculature, and that goes, through the mesentery. That's what the as you said, the conduit for all of this is in our relationship. And so we have the nervous system, lymphatic system, the arterioles, the veins that are returning, where all this information is gathered. And then even as we talk about it, it's like, oh yeah. And when there's excess fat in the mesentery, that's an indication of insulin resistance, moving towards issues of disease that arise from obesity that is around truncal fat and mesenteric or bad fat. It's all happening right there. And it's happening at the junction, at the interface with our environment. So as we work to begin to put our hands on the body and begin to understand what's happening, we look at what's going on from a motility standpoint coming down, the foods that we eat and how we break them down, what happens in the stomach. And we'll talk a little later about the role of histamine and stomach acid and the activation. But then as it moves down into the 3 parts of the small intestine, from the duodenum to the jejunum to the ileum, that's where the whole interface is going on. And it's where our immune system is being activated or inactivated, as it were, from both the foods that we eat and the relationship of those foods, which are feeding not only us, but feeding the microbes that are present there. So when one puts their hands on that area to begin to see what's going on, you're trying to get a sense of what's the energy that's moving through this. This is the actual the upper gut is about digestion and preparation. This is where the absorption is happening. This is where that real interface is. And if we don't feel motility and movement going through that area because things are stuck energetically and not moving, or if we see that it's moving okay, but the absorption's not working properly and it's not being activated, or the things that are being absorbed are actually moving towards inducing inflammation and reaction and insulin resistance, heart disease, etc. It's the direct interface. So we're putting our hands on that to say, is it working? Is it moving or not? Now, sometimes it can be related to in the hands-on work of Jean-Pierre Barral, who's focused on the visceral manipulation, where he's trying to move things in a certain way to allow for flow and movement to occur. That's one way of talking about it. That's one aspect to consider. But the other is about really connecting into, not just the structural aspects, but the energetic aspects of movement. And how do we sense that, and how do we help to support a balanced absorption to occur? And what we find is that, while I've focused on it more from a biochemical standpoint, where food is information, food is medicine, food is connection, that there's also, what's actually happening in our bodies and how do we help promote movement, and through that movement increasing our awareness or facilitating our awareness. So focusing on the mesentery is a way to be able to connect to the gut in a very, very different way. When we then move on to the large intestine and the way in which you work with it in the approach that you showed me at the International Feldenkrais Guild meeting, you're very attuned to what's happening at the ileocecal valve and how things are then moving and or held within the large intestine. That's something that is easier to actually palpate, because now we have coming up the ascending colon and the transverse colon coming across the ascending colon, moving into the sigmoid. You can really get a very tactile what's going, because it's physically demonstrating itself. In the small intestine, we're not feeling the structure as much as we're feeling the energy that's present there. And so we have to tune ourselves in to be able to feel what's happening in that area. But the reason I asked the question and I highlighted it is, as I've said, that's the fundamental interface that's happening in terms of our relationship to the foods we eat and to our environment. You've heard me speak that, I view this as essentially the earth element. We're bringing the earth element into our body, and the macronutrients, the proteins, fats, and carbs that we take make up the proteins, fats, and carbs in our body, the vitamins and minerals that we're able to take in and be able to absorb, make up all the vitamin mineral cofactors that allow for every activity to go on in our body. And when that's not working, even from someone who's eating whole organic food, mostly vegetables, or mostly plants, not to in creating balance, but that digestive fire and absorptive capacity is not working, they are not able to move to health and well-being. And being able to help them, through this awareness and through this approach gives the opportunity for that healing to occur. And I think it's a critical piece that I've been aware of on the structure of the body and its relationship in other areas, but I haven't focused on how we can use, hands-on approaches and that kind of awareness to really be able to promote balance, which is the work that you're bringing into the world. And it's why, from the time I was coming to the conference and I read about you, I'm like, oh, this is a whole area of exploration that's new and very important in the whole realm of a holistic healing approach. It's absolutely necessary. And I have patients who I'm trying to work with the motility issues and the absorption issues, and having this as another aspect of promoting healing, very key.
I'm so glad that you're saying this, and that you keep bringing up the word about the energy flowing through, because very much so, I feel like I'm listening with my hands to the bioelectrical conduction, the bioelectrical conductivity, in terms of that energetic flow. And people that come to me in my practice, everywhere from very healthy people just wanting to be tuned up, to feel better, to be even better, to people who come with serious neurological problems, and to babies and children with severe autism and other undiagnosable problems. And it seems like it always goes back to that energetic connection not flowing through, and especially through the mesentery. There's something in the mesentery. There's something that goes to the pancreas. The pancreas kind of does a tweak, a pull. The mesentery becomes, it doesn't do a lack of movement. It just sometimes feels bioelectrically, biochemically, neurochemically, energetically, completely offline. And that's about the time a seizure is going to come up. And we can see this start to happen in the person, like the email that I sent you about the young woman that has serious vagal tone issues, but we're talking serious. She's on maybe 15 different medications. And she has a cardiologist, she has a neurologist, she has an endocrinologist, she has a gastroenterologist, everybody's got her on drugs and no one's helping her, and she's only 27. And after only 4 times of working with her, she is now, yesterday, I faked it. That's my faking lesson. I thought I had to teach the husband and I had to teach her what to do. So I put a magic marker, and I with a magic marker outlined the pancreas, and a magic marker of an area of the mesentery that goes quiet. And I go, that's where your hands are going to go. Now let's fake it. You ready? Kind of like smile until the curl induces serotonin and all of that. So we created to get the movement, and I showed them just some small movement to do. Now, she has a special dog that yelps when she's about ready to go into an episode that is not called a grand mal seizure. It's not called a seizure because it doesn't show in the brain, but the whole process looks like one. And so the dog gave the yelp, gave the look at her. This is yesterday, and her lips went white, which is what happens. So she laid down, and always the husband just goes, honey, 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 right? So I had shown her, just as a process starts to happen, what she can do. So I had her do one aspect. I had him do the other aspect on the mesentery. And you want to know what, Patrick? It never turned into the episode. And it took 10 minutes maximum of them doing this movement work on themselves, on her, and breathing together until all the color came back in her lips and in her face, and her voice went from, because that's what her voice goes high pitch when it's starting, to coming back here like this and going,
Wow, that's fantastic.
And you want to know what? Today, she's boarding a plane for the first time in months to fly back home to her family in Asheville, North Carolina.
But the only thing about that I would add is that's not faking it. That's not faking it. It's just bringing the energetic awareness that you have and teaching her how to be able to begin that energetic awareness, and that the ability of the body to heal itself, and bringing attention and intention to that spot. It brings the energy in, and where it's needing energy because it's not flowing and not moving. And so you're doing that, and you're helping to move that along. It makes perfect physiologic sense.
Well, and the greatest gift of that is I always thought I only could teach it to people who have sensitive hands, who know how to feel, who know how to touch so that they can do. Well, they didn't. They're not trained in this. And yet, just being told and guided through it, they did it.
But having that feedback loop for them where they're getting immediate feedback and the resonance is their resonance. I mean, we know that, when you touch a person and I touch a person, it's going to have a different effect, right? But when the person is touching themselves, they're getting the immediate feedback, and they have, if they can move through, like the opportunity that you did yesterday, have the opportunity to get that feedback and feel it, then it moves into balance. And the intuitive wisdom of the body. So now you're just helping to bring that. Over time, she may be able to do that without even having to use her hands, with using the intention and the awareness. And as she cultivates that habitual pattern of moving in that way, she'll be able to pick up the signals much sooner than the lips going white, to be able to say, oh, that's a habitual pattern that I move into, and bring, whether it's the tactile aspect or even just the energetic intentionality, to bring balance. And you're helping her to know for the first time in a long time that she can do something about it. She's not dependent on an external process to fix her, but rather an internal process that she can self-regulate.
Exactly. That it's that self-learning and getting it to the point where you know what you know so deeply in, so that you understand the shifts and changes, so that you can do it before the dog yelps, until eventually it doesn't even happen anymore.
Right, exactly. Well, it'll be interesting just to hear how that continues on. And then also to look at points where it does happen, where she's moving into a state of not being able to connect to herself, because that will reveal something else in the overall process. But you're on that journey of healing with her, and I so appreciate your willingness to explore and learn.
Wow. Thank you for your feedback. Well, I mean, it goes that, when you look up information and, coming back to mesentery, because for her, literally, and for many people, that's what I felt. So this is wonderful, open conversation to have about the importance and the functioning of mesentery and what happens when it's not working properly. And is it starting in the small intestines? Is there a physiological effect that's happening in the mesentery first? Is it both of them? And, maybe in Feldenkrais, we might say it doesn't matter. Let's guide through to understanding of our food. What are we doing to heal the small intestines, the health within that? And then how can we add in the hands-on part? And how do we add in the awareness through movement part so that we're getting that movement? So whereas in Baral is working with just the hands-on and you need to go to an expert, I want to show people how everybody can do this for themselves.
Yeah.
And yeah.
There's one other thing I want to add, and we talked about it last time, but to me, it connects in and actually then moves beyond the kind of patients that you're talking about and to a much more common component. And we spoke of it at the conference, and we've spoken about it a little bit since that time. But coming then to the pancreas and talking about vagal tone and a way in which the awareness of that. Because as I shared with you, I see 20 to 30% of the patients who are coming in to see me have pancreatic issues that are going on, which previously we thought were primarily because the villi weren't working well and signaling the pancreas. But what we find more and more is that even in settings where the villi are working fine, it's the decrease in vagal tone, which is not stimulating the pancreas to be able to do its job. And so now we get into talking about parasympathetic, sympathetic tone and working to help patients with that. It is directly connected to what we're talking about here and being able to use that kind of awareness, so the pancreas is connected through the pancreatic duct and through that opening that I love the name. It sounds like it's from Star Wars, the sphincter of Odai, where the pancreatic juices and the bile is coming out. And so that's what's necessary as part of the digestion. So we've been focusing right here in the mesentery on the absorptive component, but the digestive component, of course, the preparation, the amylase, the stomach acid, but then the pancreas, really key in being able to help with the breakdown of the foods, the digestive process. And so it's the mesentery that we focused on here, but I want to connect back to that vagal tone parasympathetic component, the so-called French or Italian paradox, and being able to slow down and take time and allow the food to be digested, and what we can do to focus on parasympathetic tone as an essential part of that.
Okay, and let's add another piece on the pancreas, is how many times somebody is here, right? They stand like this, and how do we know that the pancreas isn't getting the motility and the great functioning because it's being smashed? It's being inhibited physically by its environment. So when we can put our hand towards the pancreas and create our awareness through movement, understanding to give that space, then when I put my hand back on the pancreas is back on, not on as an off, but the pancreas is more fully functioning through the whole pancreas. I would say that when you said 30% in your practice, people come to me because their low back is hurting. They come to me because they have pain in their leg, or they want to improve their walking or their sports or something like that. But I always cop a feel on all the organs first. And it's like, do you mind? I would say 85% of the time, a part of the pancreas is it's not as great as the other part. And there's so much conversation that we can have about that. But when I work with getting movement within the ribs to get movement from the pelvis and do pelvic movement, rib cage movement, doing a beautiful awareness through movement, connecting it through the legs, come back, touch the pancreas. I didn't have to do a thing. They didn't have to go to an expert. that does only organ work, suddenly the whole pancreas is like going, I'm doing my thing.
Yeah. And what you're doing is you're intervening earlier on. So
Right.
that difference is that you're seeing some parts of it that are out of balance, and you're helping to bring it so that it's fully functioning. The redundancy of our organs is so amazing that we often have no symptoms or no expression of dysfunction until it's at 90% limited. And so what I'm saying is that in the patients that I'm seeing, where 30% of them have problems, that's actually in Ayurveda, they talk about the fifth level of imbalance that's already occurring. You're feeling it earlier because you're connecting to the energetics of the whole thing and helping to prevent them from continuing to go down that pathway. And that's a wonderful thing that you can share with the other practitioners and help people through their awareness to say, well, how do I optimize function? How do I optimize my own health and well-being? A wonderful gift.
Thank you. Thank you. So there's so much more discussion we could have, but I would like to keep this one within this time, and we will go on to our next talk.
Okay.
Patrick, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.